Thank you very much, Aharon Levarko, for joining us and sharing your expertise with us and our audiences. Now we move on to our next story. Russia has launched a massive wave of attacks on Kyiv and other cities, killing at least 15 people and injuring dozens more. Over 440 drones and 32 missiles were fired overnight, causing widespread damage. In Kyiv, a ballistic missile ripped through a 9-story apartment block in the Solomyansky district, flattening an entire section. Emergency teams worked through the night to rescue survivors trapped under rubble. President Zelensky called the strike one of the most horrific on the capital since the full-scale invasion began in 2022. He described the attacks as pure terrorism and urged Western nations to respond firmly. According to officials, 27 locations across the city were hit, including homes, schools, and infrastructure. A 62-year-old U.S. citizen was among those killed. In Odessa, a separate drone strike left 1 dead and at least 17 wounded. Attacks also hit the Sumy and Kherson regions, killing 2 more. Russia's defense ministry claims it intercepted 147 Ukrainian drones over its own territory in response. Meanwhile, diplomatic talks have stalled. Zelensky, who was in Canada for the G7 summit, sought to rally support, but President Trump left the meeting early, shifting U.S. policy towards Moscow's position and calling for Russia to be readmitted to the G7. And in a significant move, the European Union is set to announce a legal ban on Russian gas imports by the end of 2027. The plan includes a phased approach starting in 2026 and aims to end Europe's energy dependence on Moscow. Now we move on to Middle East. Israeli tank shell fire has killed at least 51 Palestinians in the southern Gaza Strip. According to the territory's health ministry, the victims were reportedly waiting for aid trucks along the main eastern road in Khan Yunis when Israeli tanks opened fire. Medics on the scene said more than 200 people were wounded, including at least 20 in critical condition. There has been no immediate comment from the Israeli military. Witnesses said tanks fired at least 2 shells into the crowd of thousands. This marks the latest in a string of deadly incidents involving Palestinians seeking aid. Since the war began in October 2023, Gaza's health ministry says nearly 55,000 Palestinians have been killed. Israel's campaign followed Hamas attacks that killed 1,200 people and took around 250 hostages. Now we move on to Central Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Astana, Kazakhstan, to attend the second China Central Asia Summit. He landed on Monday, greeted warmly by Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev and top officials. Kazakh fighter jets escorted Xi's aircraft as it entered the country's airspace. At the airport, children waving Chinese and Kazakh flags welcomed him with music and performances. Xi and Tokayev reviewed the guard's honor as helicopters flew national flags overhead. Inside the VIP lounge, the leaders enjoyed performances by Kazakh teenagers. China and Kazakhstan signed multiple cooperation deals in trade, investment, technology, and tourism. President Xi stressed the need to protect multilateralism and improve rail and port infrastructure. On Tuesday, Xi met with Tajik President Emomali Rahmon and Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov in Astana, continuing high-level talks. The summit marks a key moment in China's growing strategic ties with Central Asia. Now we move on to North America. In an update from Minnesota, the suspect accused of assassinating a top state lawmaker and her husband this weekend had a broader plan, prosecutors say. The 57-year-old Vance Bolter is now facing state and federal murder charges after what authorities are calling a politically motivated killing spree. Investigators say Bolter fatally shot House Democratic leader Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, then wounded State Senator John Hoffman and his wife in a separate attack nearby. Prosecutors have now revealed Bolter visited the homes of at least 2 other lawmakers dressed as a police officer and was found with a hit list naming more than 45 public officials, mainly Democrats. Recovered notebooks and weapons suggest he had been planning the attacks for weeks with detailed surveillance notes. Authorities eventually tracked him down after a 2-day manhunt, the largest in Minnesota's history. Bolter was captured armed but surrendered without incident in a rural field. If convicted, he could face the death penalty. Officials say the investigation is ongoing to ascertain any further details of the shooting. Now we move on to Africa. The death toll from a brutal attack in north-central Nigeria has risen to 150. Gunmen stormed the Yelewata community in Benue State late Friday night, shooting villagers and setting homes on fire. Many victims were sheltering in a local market when attacked. No group has claimed responsibility, but clashes between herders and farmers are common here. The government blames armed herdsmen for the violence. President Bola Tinubu condemned the attack as senseless bloodletting and promised swift action. He plans to visit the affected community Wednesday. Survivors are still searching for the missing amid widespread devastation. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue